His name's Arib. Most recently, he started a company called Crayo, and they're doing over 500K a month.
What?
He launched this less than 6 months ago.
500K a month?
It's crazy, right?
What is good, fellow Americans? This is Michael Zakan and Simran Sandhu reporting in from Our Future podcast. Haven't seen y'all in about 2 weeks, but we're ready to swing for the fences with this episode, talking about some young founders who are doing some cool stuff, also chiming in with a bit of our own knowledge and stories. I guess about a year now of the Our Future podcast. This is crazy. I'm pretty sure we launched like early July, maybe late July. Do you remember?
Yeah, early July. It has been a full year, and I feel like it's been a ton of fun, man.
Yeah.
Like, we have a lot of these conversations offline, so naturally it just makes sense to put it on a pod and let the rest of the world hear it.
The problem is our offline conversations are like 10 times as funny. We just they don't make it to the pod. Like, I feel like we use all of our ammo and then we're just kind of shooting blanks sometimes, but I think we need to do a better job of like saving all the good shit for like the podcast. It's like, I shouldn't call you.
I know, for real. It's like we start going on a really great tangent, and then it's like, wait, save it for the pod. Save it for the pod.
It's like, dude,
so hopefully we got
exhausted.
a few good nuggets here.
Yeah, man. I mean, dude, it was super fun. Like, I just talked to a entrepreneur. Her name's a complete badass. So her name's Denise Hazime. She's from Michigan, and she built this company. She went to the University of Michigan. That's how I got in contact with her. She built this company called ProdoScore, which is essentially a software tool that enables companies to track the productivity of their employees. And she was like so cutthroat and so like cool. Like, she was like, yeah, like, you can't be soft these days. You like got to get your ass to work. He's like, people are complaining about being tracked on the workplace. Like, it should make them better workers. She's like, kids in Singapore, their scores on tests are public. She's like, it should be the same way in companies. And she's like, I sold that shit to private equity. It's lit.
That's crazy.
I feel like private equity companies love businesses like that, like sticky HR, productivity. And she said another reason why a private equity firm bought her company, or I think majority stake, is because they want to implement it across their portfolio companies. So she said private equity companies actually have a high propensity to purchasing or investing in software companies that somehow align with their management style. So if you're building a product that, tracks employee productivity and helps you weed out bad talent and cut costs and increase profits, like, they're all over that shit.
It's super funny. I never knew there was such alignment between private equity firms and agency owners trying to build SaaS. It's like, how do we automate a lot of this shit and minimize our costs across like our entire company?
So, dude, any man who thinks he can like automate his agency is just, he's dead already. I wish him peace, dude. It's just not possible.
Well, let's be real though. Like, private equity, most of those, companies these days, like, instead of going public, I feel like most of them just get bought, and like, there's always some kind of buyer in the PE world, because there's such little like opportunities, I think, in terms of like good supply. And I think a lot of the companies they go after are like companies that like don't need them. Like, they're really strong companies, super flush with cash, have been around for decades, just kind of like winning in their niche. And it's like, why would we ever sell to you guys? And so I've just found that to be like more recurring than not, which is like people just exit to PE, make tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're living the life.
Well, I mean, I think it's a little more rare for tech companies. Like, she built a full-on B2B software business. The origination of it was tracking sales teams. I mean, still a lot of it is tracking phone calls and Google Calendar and like what people are actually doing on the job. But she started in 2015. So it was a mature business. They did a Series A. But I think like we don't hear that much about venture-backed founders ending up taking a private equity round and stepping back. Private equity comes in with a majority stake, changes the CEO. You can sell your secondaries. You know how it goes. But I think they're only buying businesses that, one, have incredible cash flow, that are probably profitable, and operate in a very niche category. I think those are probably like the three metrics that private equity looks for if they're going to buy a tech company, when typically that isn't their area of expertise. I mean, you could look at like a Vista Equity Partners and say or a Thoma Bravo and be like, oh, that's PE for software. But I think it's usually got to be like these niche cash cow software companies.
Yeah, dude. And I think anyone who's actually very interested in this, a good resource is a video that John Hu put on his YouTube channel about like his days working in private equity. He kind of like spills out the entire formula on like what kind of opportunities they're looking at, how they like structure these deals, how they get in contact with them. And I bet you could reverse engineer it because I think, everyone has their own approach to entrepreneurship. Some people are just like, they see a problem, they go after it. And I think others are a little bit more methodical, which is like, hey, I want this kind of outcome. And so they kind of reverse
Yeah.
engineer. It's like, if I want to make $100 million, I need to go to this space. I need to get this many customers. I need to price the product somewhere over here. And so I think anyone who's interested should probably go check out that video.
Yeah, man. John Hu is the GOAT when it comes to like lifting the veil on what it's like to work in these industries and build a startup. So he's the GOAT.
I was gonna say, like, John's company is super impressive. Like, we've covered it on the pod, like I would say earlier when we were getting going, but that company is crushing. Like, he's always hitting some new ARR milestone. Like, I think they're over like 20 million ARR at this point. The company's only been around for a few years, but he is like an example of like somebody who has just nailed it in like this world of all these creator economy startups and companies and such. And he's just a really talented founder. But it makes me think of this recent post that Levels.io put on his X account, where he was essentially just like advocating for the bootstrap route. And he was talking about like why essentially like building a venture backed company is just like horrible because like he was doing some rough like envelope or back of napkin math, and he essentially equated it to where like venture backed founders, even if they were like in the top 1% or something along those lines, like the outcomes were still really, really small. And on average, like the VC backed founder only makes like 380 grand over the course of 8 to 9 years. Now, like that stirred like an outrage. There were like all these tech people who were like, this is horrible, like clearly not nuanced enough, like you're not accounting for this and that and whatever. But I thought it was pretty crazy, right? Because like, again, like the bootstrap route can just be so lucrative if you play your cards right and you can do it at your own pace.
Yeah, dude. I think more and more about how just cool it would be to like own a company. Like my dad and his business partner own their company 50-50. It's a software business in the semiconductor industry, and it makes, I think low 8 figures a year. And it's kind of like stayed that way, but it's like a very niche product. And it's just insane to like be able to cash flow like that with two people who run a business, like 50-50. It's absolutely insane. Like that is the kind of
Yeah, and they've
lifestyle
been
that you
doing it
want.
forever, I imagine.
Yeah. Why would you? I mean, you maybe want to sell it at some point, but like you could just hold on to that thing. It's not like either of them even have to operate it anymore.
For sure. And there was something you were telling me about, or someone you were telling me about that, like, is building a crazy, like, bootstrap SaaS business of some kind, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's this kid, his name is Dhruv Bindra. So he's a student at Duke, and he notices that all the girls in class around him are just shopping for clothes. Doesn't matter the lecture, doesn't matter the topic. They're always kind of looking for their next outfit. So he decides to cash in on this opportunity. He creates an app called Styl, which is essentially Tinder for fashion. So you swipe on clothes left or right, and then as it gets to learn kind of your interests in different clothing, it'll tailor the recommendations towards you. So strong product. I think over 80,000 downloads now. And this kid originally approached me, I think a year or two ago. He was a huge fan of the Our Future content, and he was trying to build like a crypto media company. And I remember opening this DM, and there's this kid with this super thick Indian accent. Yo, I want to build like this crypto business, whatever. And I kind of, to discredit myself, like I kind of wrote him off, and I was like, I don't know if I could see this guy being the face of like a media company and pretty much anything. And anyways, some time goes on, and I start to see that he's building, a new company or whatever. Styl blows up, and he did it all through founder-led marketing. He just recorded himself on camera and essentially talked about how, for example, he wasn't going to shave his mustache until 100,000 sorority girls downloaded his app. And they're all like, they're all behind it. Like they're eating it up. Like he's just talking in his accent, shaving on camera. And he's like, this is day 55 of not shaving my mustache. And then he decided to shave the wrong way. So people would comment on that. But he's employed a bunch of crazy growth hacks. And, you know, I think a lot of people have thought of this idea for like Tinder for shopping, but it was only until recently that these AI tools became accessible enough and widespread enough for a solopreneur and his co-founder. I guess he has a co-founder. Two college kids in a dorm room to like build a product that can really accurately give product recommendations and build an algorithm that caliber. So really impressive. No money raised. Founder-led marketing and distribution, and he's crushing it. So super impressive. And I wrote him off a little bit, but the guy became a media star in his own right and got in touch with some of the biggest celebrities in the world. Like he had Meghan Trainor comment and Alex Earl hit like talk to him and all this stuff. So unbelievable kind of ability to command an audience and like, you know, make them get behind him in his journey.
Well, I feel like most of his traction has come, through very recently. Like, I feel like they really, were hitting their heads against the wall for a while there, because I know it's just him and his
Yeah.
co-founder. And like, sometimes when they talk about like product and market fit, like there's also like a founder in market fit in there as well. And like, I don't know, I feel like at face value, like kind of to what you're saying, like there is a misalignment. Like you wouldn't think of just like a random Indian kid trying to take over like women's
Yeah.
fashion, but like that happens all the time. And who knew it was like something as scrappy as just like shaving your face the
Yeah.
wrong way and finding like a video series and sticking it through, and seeing it through and like sticking with it. And I think, it goes to show that like people always try to reinvent the wheel when it comes to like trying to come up with viral marketing tactics and stuff, but it's literally like the dumbest, simplest stuff that works really,
Yeah.
really well. I was reading, like, let's move over to like B2B world. There's this company called Anti-Metal. And maybe we had made a clip about them, or we had covered them on
Yeah,
the
we
pod
did.
at
Yeah.
some point, but I just saw some like big press outlet make an article about them, about how like they essentially made pizzas and they were sending it to a bunch of prospects for their launch, and they spent 15 grand on those pizzas, literally just sending it to like all these like big companies or whatever. And it created over $1 million in MRR for them, or like revenue, because like those pizzas were enough to get them to like get their foot in the door, and then they ended up being customers, right? And it's like, okay, sending pizza to customers doesn't sound all that like innovative or revolutionary, but it works.
Dude, free food. I mean, that's probably what they have in common is like free food for college kids, free food for B2B employees managing their cloud spend. Like it all is comes back down to the same human genetic code, right? Like we're trying to get some calories. Um, so I also think there's an angle of like you can't be afraid to humiliate yourself. Like he's turned himself into a meme. He's taken a ton of shit, right, from people. Like there's people who comment, they're like, dude, enroll in like an accent removal class. Like it's hella mean and shit. But I don't know. He's developed thicker skin and he knows he's winning, you know? And I think there's an element of like, if you are a founder, like you have to be willing to record yourself on camera, just keep shipping content. Like don't let people forget about you. Kind of make a fool of yourself a little bit because it's what's going to get people's attention. It's going to drive downloads or users to your product. I think like founders these days have to be able to do that. And I think a lot of these YC founders just they're missing the mark on that. I think a lot of kids still try and revert back to those lessons in YC of is like, oh, like blow up on Hacker News or get your TechCrunch article. Like that doesn't work anymore. Like you need a consistent owned distribution mechanism for your company. And it's got to be you because who else is going to
I
do it?
couldn't agree
You can
more.
hire
I
our
couldn't
future
agree
to do
more.
it, but who can afford that at the
Yeah.
early stage? You know what I mean?
Well, I also think it's like, know what game you're playing. I think if you're trying to build a consumer app and you're trying to use like TikTok marketing strategies to do it, you have to create content that is very comment inducing, but in a very strong way. I think most people will like try to create content that will get people to agree with them, but you don't want soft responses. Like you don't
Yeah.
want to invoke like soft kind of emotional like, "Oh, I kind of agree with this. Like this is cool." Like you want to either be like strongly positive or strongly negative in one direction or the other, because that is what gets comments, that is what gets shares. And if you're playing the viral consumer app game, like that's what you have to do. And I think tough skin, having tough skin aside, like if you're not the guy for it, like find someone else who is, because there are people out there who are just like willing to get shit on, and at the ass end of it, like they know they're getting a check and they're totally okay with it. So I think, is it likely most founders are willing to like adjust? I think some are. I don't know if all are. I do think it takes a certain kind of founder to like put themselves out there and like get shit on. But
But we're
if you're
also
not comfortable, just find someone else who is.
But
So I yeah.
even outside of consumer, like in B2B, like we're seeing people create outsized advantages for themselves by investing in their personal brand and by having founder-led videos and doing quirky stuff. Like it truly is a superpower, and no matter what product you're building, right? So I think it's time to get on the ship or figure out something else. I don't know what that would be, but if you're not doing it, you're probably doing something wrong. Um,
Look, I think most people know that distribution is king, right? So there's another example that like comes to mind. So there's this, 20-year-old kid, his name's Arib Khan. He's making over $650,000 a month building out these AI products. So, he started his first company when he was 19 years old. It was this AI music generator tool called Musicify. It essentially lets you change your voice, and they played a huge role in all those songs that went super viral on TikTok from AI Drake and AI SpongeBob. But that company did over 100K a month in its first 100 days from launch, right? And so he kept building on that momentum. Most recently, he started a company called Crayo, and they're doing over 500K a month. And it's an AI tool that lets you create short form videos. And,
what?
he launched this less than 6 months ago.
500K a
And
month?
I think the big secret here, or it's crazy, right? 500K a month. I think the key to his success is that he has a distribution edge in all of his companies. So he only starts companies in spaces where he knows he can get 1 million site visitors in the first 90 days. And usually he does this by partnering with the right creators to amplify it. And so, he's building out this holding company of sorts. I was recently texting him and he said he bought up 6 more companies, and he's just going to keep repeating this playbook because there's almost this like misunderstanding taking place in the Silicon Valley world, which is, hey, let's just build a great product and the users will come. But he's kind of the opposite of that. He's like, good products aren't enough. If you can't get this in front of people and get their attention, like what good is that? And so he's taken all of the elements of having a Silicon Valley background, but like combined it with, the right kind of distribution strategies, and he's winning.
Dude, how is a short form video product doing $500,000 a month? I'm trying to look at it right now. So generates an AI script for you. It's just like kind of like makes you a TikTok video or whatever. That's insane. And people are paying for this.
Yeah, dude, there's tons of these services and they're all crushing right now. So HeyGen is another one that has been out for a while. They did $35 million in ARR. And I think they've been out for less than 2
Dude,
years. It's crazy. All of
I've
these
heard
short
of
form video AI creation tools are crushing. Opus does like millions of dollars a year.
Well, dude, here's the thing. I'm sure these businesses are crushing. There's probably businesses that raised a $10 million pre-seed or seed round to do the exact same thing that have a fraction of the monthly revenue. It's like I've heard of horror stories in the AI world where companies will raise millions of dollars to build a product and some solopreneur has built it and is making money hand over fist and has no need to worry about the market changing or OpenAI launching a feature because they own the entire thing and they're making a ton of cash, right? And they didn't raise a bunch of money and have board members and stuff. Like it just goes to show another advantage to building one of these AI businesses as a lifestyle business, as a project that you ship and like something that you own, It's just another argument for owning 100% of what you do.
Yeah, and I think you can reverse engineer it, right? So I would be targeting the companies NYC or these people raising big venture rounds because there's like AI is still so early, right? And I imagine like all started by super successful smart people, but they don't know exactly how this industry is going to play out. So the smart thing is like ride that same wave, but de-risk it by not taking outside money, and having to play on outside expectations. Like, know what game you're playing. This is kind of what I'm going back to with the earlier point, right? Like, right now the trend is like you go build one of these tools. That said, like, I think he is a certain kind of founder. Like, he's extremely ambitious. He knows exactly what he's doing. So, like, I don't think many people can just go replicate what Arib is doing. Like, I think like he is like pushing all the right buttons. Like, and his tweets are super controversial, right? So, like, I think that like it's one of those things though that like he knows he's just going to make millions of dollars from these products, and he's okay with that, right? Like, the goal isn't go take Crayo over here and turn it into $1 billion company. And I think it goes back to the fact that like a lot of these AI tools that people are building, they're building them in spaces where you can have tons of competitors and you can still win, right? Like, it doesn't matter that there's like 100 AI short form video tools. If you have like the right approach and the right strategy, you can still build a big company, right? And what I would say is big companies, millions of dollars a year. And I think that was his kind of big piece of
Yeah.
advice, is like, just focus on your distribution advantage or wherever you have an edge and lean into it. Like, instead of like just focusing on like trying to make up for your weaknesses, like figure out what your strengths are and just double down.
How, okay, so I don't know. Instacart was in YC in like, I don't know, 2014 or some shit. How many YC companies were trying to build a grocery delivery app? Like, probably very few. These days, there's just so much symmetry amongst the Y Combinator batches. And we know this intimately because we prospected them a while for our agency sales. And there are just so many recurring businesses. It's like, for one, I don't know what the YC investors are thinking, but like, how on earth would one of these somehow just dominate or rise above the rest? Like, what market mechanic is going to be in play for one of these to just consume the entire market? Doesn't feel like it makes any sense to me that one of these could be just such a breakout success and be the winner in like AI SDR, right? Let's just look at AI sales. Like, I feel like everybody's doing something in that capacity, or enterprise search, or, you know,
For sure.
automating a certain business task. Like, what makes them think that one of those companies is going to break out and just dominate?
Well, I think that like the YC approach is more so like they're just betting on the founders. I think like they're expecting most of them to pivot, and I would imagine that has to play into the rationale of like essentially funding your competitors in the same batch, right? Like, you have to imagine like either it's just cutthroat and they're just like, one of you is gonna win,
It's like the Hunger
and
Games.
like so be it, or they're just expecting, yeah, or they're expecting you to pivot along the way, and it's like, hey, we're just going to put 500, 750K, I forget whatever number it is, and it's like, I expect that you're going to pivot away from your current idea, and that's totally fine, but like, you're a strong founder and we're going to support you. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think right
What?
now it's just like, do most of the founders in YC face the problem that they're trying to solve? I would probably say no, but like, everyone is seeing where like the trends are headed. People see where the money is going, and the natural response, I think, is like, let's just go build a company in that space.
Yeah, dude. Y Combinator is just a volume game at the end of the day. It's just like, I guess, the rest of the VC landscape is kind of just trying to, hit as many roulette throws as possible. Um, but dude, I think YC needs to teach people more like about creating content. Like, YC needs to be, my hot take is YC needs to transition itself to become more of a content school than a startup school. I think if you try and run back all the tactics of the 2010s that Alexis Ohanian, Paul Graham, and Apoorva Mehta pioneered, like, you're not going to have success in this current environment. I almost feel like that curriculum that they've been proceeding with, like, obviously the connections are valuable, the mentorship, but like the whole curriculum of like a startup school, I feel like that can't be rigid, and YC needs to change quickly, I feel like, in order to catch up with the current wave of how startups get big.
I agree. They're probably running, a playbook that hasn't changed a whole lot. And there is this aspect of like what worked then isn't going to work now, because like business conditions have changed. Like, markets are just moving way quicker. I think innovation is happening on a much faster scale, harder to create moats, harder to compete, more competitors than ever before. And I agree, like maybe not so like change the entire curriculum, but I definitely think distribution needs to be a key piece in whatever they're teaching those
Okay.
people. I will tell you, I find that like there is a little bit of a echo chamber in like a lot of like YC founders. Not saying this is consistent with all of them, but like definitely a few, which is like they have their talking points and it feels a little repetitive at times. And I don't know. I find that like the greatest founders, anytime you read about them, anytime you study them, if your goal again is like to build a multi-billion dollar company, it's mostly because like driven by eccentricities. Like founders who are very eccentric are very good at like just kind of doing an inner reflection and being authentically themselves, and they just go crush it, right? Like they're not like they're not leaning into like any other ideologies or frameworks. Like they just like they think critically about the problems they're trying to solve, and they are relentless in trying to do anything they can to go do it, even if they're weird or not charismatic or whatever. I think like that is kind of the thing that separates them, is just being so different from everybody else.
So I guess we talked about a lot about, and I agree with all that. We talked a lot about like creating distribution for your startup is everything, right? I mean, it's nothing new. We talk about this all the time. We're fucking, record machines that don't stop playing the same jukebox song. But what do you think about spending money on marketing? Because I have talked to a lot of young entrepreneurs that are way too sheepish on spending money on marketing. And for some reason, it's this super taboo thing in the startup landscape that you're not supposed to. I think I'm coming to disagree with that, and that hiring good agencies and hiring good marketing talent and like investing in advertising is, what is actually going to grow your business. It's like, yeah, I spent 15 grand on pizza, but I got $1 million in ARR in return. So I think a lot of people still like couldn't chalk up that 15 grand on pizza. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think you have to
Yeah.
spend money to make money. And I do think, a lot of product people probably look down at marketing. Like they see it as like beneath them a little bit because it feels like just like it's kind of like how most people think about sales and some people or say salespeople, which is like, oh, it's just like, dumb
Yeah.
jocks. Like, or like there's a certain kind of stigma to it, which is that like if you're a smart, intelligent person trying to change the world, like you're probably not in marketing or sales. But unfortunately, like the reality is like that is the place where value is being created in today's world. So I'm not saying that like product isn't still important. I'm just saying it's a little bit of a smaller piece of the puzzle, because even if you look at it, like there's not a whole lot of differentiation from product to product in most of these spaces. Like they're ripping off the same features, they're ripping off the same positioning and stuff like that, like landing pages even like eerily similar. There's been this thing as of recent, which is just like most companies are just copying Ramp's landing page.
Yeah.
Like it's just like if you go to most like
Dumb as
landing
fuck.
pages in VC world, they just look eerily similar to Ramp. And so I think like again, it's important, and you may not like it, and you may not again want to be the person who's like in front of the camera, but like you got to pay attention to it. Now I do think you can take smart bets, right? You don't need to go spend 20 grand 50 grand to go prove out stuff. You can do small mini bets that can show you if things are worth doubling down. I recently had a conversation with Rahil, who is the CMO at this company called Fermat. And he was the CMO of Triple Whale. They were like a super buzzy ecom SaaS. I don't know how they're doing, but I know they were definitely like buzzy when Raba was there. And we had this conversation around like, hey, if you had 100 grand and you had to spend it on marketing, where would you spend the money at? And my answer was essentially like along these lines, which was, I would take 100 grand and I would put a third of it to the side, right? Like I'm not touching that. I would spend a third of it in building out an organic content engine, right? Like, and the thing with organic content is you may not see the results immediately, but like you have to think about it long term and strategically, which is like if you start investing in building out your own content now, whether it's you as the founder or someone on your team or having like a social lead, that will eventually reduce your CAC over the long term, because you can't build trust, you can't build brand overnight, right? Like, so that's kind of a long-term brand building exercise. And then I would take a third of it and I would make mini bets. Now, I think it kind of depends on like who your CMO is and what kind of founder you are in terms of where you're placing that money. Like, for example, I would say that like if you're not a charismatic CEO and you don't have the money for a CMO, and I would probably not be doing a whole lot of events, right? Like, or things that like put me in a place where like I can't execute on them 100%. So again, lean on your strengths. And then I think based on the one or two things that are really, really working, you then take that money that you put to the side and you continue to double down on those two things. But I would say like concentrate your dollars, and you do need to spend the money. Like, it's not going to happen just sitting there. That whole like build product and users will come is like kind of an old school mentality. But
Yeah, and
went on a little bit of a rant there. What do you think?
as you're being sheepish, other people are going to steal market share. If you're just trying to ship product and hold on to your market budget and kind of like hold back and like wait for the right opportunity, other people are just going to gobble up, you know, the kind of attention that you could have created in that meantime. So I don't know. I think it's time to get aggressive, dude. I think it's like you got to make bets. This conservatism is holding companies back. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a disgruntled agency owner and content creator in the startups category where like we are pitching startups to like spend money with us. I'm saying it out of what I've witnessed when talking to people, what I do, and like how I would approach my next company, which is to not be risk averse when it comes to putting money into things that can generate a ton of upside, which is what marketing is, you know? So obviously I have the tools to build it myself, but
Totally.
I'm so in the boat of like putting money or equity into marketing. I don't know, it just it's how you win to these days.
Yeah, and I think there's not like one strategy that works, right? Like we gave two examples today with Dhruv. He's the one who's like, making himself look dumb in front of the camera, right? But like he's comfortable and willing to do that. With Arib, he just partners with people who are like the right faces to go promote that product, right? So his is strategic, but like those are two examples. One person doing it themselves, one person outsourcing it to somebody else.
Yeah,
And there's
dude.
probably strategy number 3 and number 4, which is like some hybrid approach.
I was talking to a YC founder, and I won't mention what company it was, but they were talking about how they have this launch coming up and they're super excited. They've raised money from a few different shops. And they were like, yeah, we're just trying to get everyone to like post for free, like as a favor, like some of our investors, like we're going to get, oh, you want free access to the product? Maybe you could like talk about it. It's like anybody who's good at marketing does not work for free. And I think that's just a bar. Like anybody,
Such a key
isn't
point.
that
And
such a good
also
point?
like influencers, such a key point. Yeah, such a key point. Also, influencers want payments up front. Like there is no like take
No.
equity and like you'll see the value of this. They're not idiots, right? Like they like most of these creators, influencers are
Yeah, we're
not
running.
business
Yeah, it's
people,
cash
right?
to
Like
cash.
they want to see
It's
the
a
money
cash to
up
cash
front.
business,
So
man. There's no
yeah.
equity here. All right, it's cold hard cash. And if you were good at distribution and getting people's attention, you're one of the most valuable people on the planet these days. That's why it's so hard to recruit someone to run your social. It's like you're gonna have to get a kid out of college who's like good at making memes, and then he's gone because he's gonna run an agency making $100,000 a month. So, yeah, I mean, if you're trying to do a strategy that's depending on the goodwill of a few people, like you just got to spend money to get people to like, promote. Like you got to put money into a launch. I think the launch is everything because you can only get it right once.
Yeah. And I think outside of the launch itself, like this happens across, companies of all sizes. Another funny example is there was this like Jason Lemkin tweet, which was, that VP with the perfect LinkedIn, who's worked at all the right companies and had the right role is just rinse repeating the same playbook. And that he's like, that could be the right playbook. But most likely it isn't. And so that's just something you want to be careful of too, is like, if you're going to go work with an agency or a creator or whatever it is, like, or just go hire someone to go lead your marketing, like make sure they have like actual unique innovative ways to like take your marketing forward for your company. Like, don't just go rely on it solely on title and rank. And like assuming that their old playbook is going to work for you. And that post came to the attention, because the CMO of HubSpot retweeted it and he was like doubling down. He's like, yes, like someone finally understands. So I truly think this is a problem that like every company faces, like multi-billion-dollar publicly traded companies, and then startups of
Yeah,
just 1
dude.
to 2
No,
people.
dude, there's
So,
no doubt, right?
yeah,
Like, I was actually just listening to a super interesting podcast with the founder of Vise, the fintech company. He was 20 years old with $1 billion.
was it
Harry
on
Stebbings. Yeah.
20
And
VC?
he was talking about
Yeah,
how he would hire
yeah,
people from these companies and they just wanted to bring their strategy that already worked to the company that they were going to. And he's like, it doesn't work. Like, never hire for that reason. So I think that's a valid ass point.
for sure. Let's wrap it up.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone for listening to Our Future Podcast. Make sure to subscribe here on YouTube or wherever you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We love chatting it up. So please leave your feedback and we'll be back with you guys soon. Make sure to follow our Instagram too at Our Future Pod. Peace out, everybody. Stay frosty.